It's so cool to think about capturing the crypto energy.
Bitcoin is backed by the energy required to create it. The cost to create is purely dependent on energy.
When you talk about like taking your health back into your own hands, people will want to do that.
DeSci and specifically Pump Science are trying to enable you to take healthcare back into your own hands.
I almost feel like Pump Science is going to become the Google of longevity data.
AI is going to solve longevity, but it's not going to do so with closed data. Brian Johnson posted this the other day. Living for tomorrow and living for forever are the same thing.
What is the game I'm playing?
The game is don't die.
All right, welcome to the next episode of the Molecule Podcast. Super excited to have Benji on from the Pump Science team. And this one's going to be a good one because we are unpacking the Pump Science protocol, which is a crypto-powered research protocol. But we will get into all of that. This episode, I will say, is a bit interesting for me. I am both host and guest. So this format will be a little bit different. It'll be less Q&A style and more just me and Benji having an open conversation about what Pump Science is, how it got here, and the future of the protocol. So with that, Benji, I don't want to do typical intros. Like, I don't want it to be too sterile. Can you just give us like a quick intro of yourself, your background, and then we'll get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's make this podcast kind of like how we made Pump Science, which is just by riffing, right? We basically riffed our way to Pump Science. But yeah, so I mean, my background is more technical. So I started off in the engineering and science side of things, academic research, commercial research, basically biotech venture capital, investment banking. Like I was really trying to figure out, how do we solve, very interesting problems in healthcare and in human health. And like from, dancing and jumping from one place in healthcare to the other, realizing that, there were always ways to have more impact, right? And, I don't think that while I was in it, I was actively, thinking, how do I have maximum impact? But I think that's just how my brain works. I feel very grateful to be able to work in, to be alive and to have, the opportunity to define a career. And I just want to work on impactful things. And to me, I think subconsciously I'd always defined that as, maximizing human health, whether by choice or not. I think that was just kind of instilled in me. And, what's interesting is there's this concept called the Kardashev scale, which is basically, yeah, so Kardashev is some, I think, Russian scientist who basically measured progress in societies based on how much energy they spend. So you basically just look at, how much energy is a country producing and consuming, and that is a measure of progress. I think we all look at capitalism and are like, we're all progressing towards something. Technology is moving faster, like everything is accelerating, right? At an accelerating rate, but toward what? I think it's less about, trying to predict what the output is, and rather just looking at the input, like how much energy are we making and consuming? That's not necessarily like reflective of, what progress looks like, but it is the core component and fuel for progress is energy. And so I think personally, what I've always come back to is this idea of the greatest impact you can have on the world is by helping, progress and increase the amount of energy we spend as a species.
It's interesting because as I'm like reflecting on your energy, I don't want to say analogy, but like topic that you were just on, it's so cool to think about capturing the crypto energy. I don't know. We've all been around in different market cycles. I mean, you and me here in this room. And crypto has like when you're in the throes of a bull market, there is like the most insane, palpable energy around crypto. And it feels like anything is possible on crypto rails. And I feel like we always know when we're at peak bull market, when my family, like my mom and dad and like people, I don't know, like far older than me, wonder, like when they start to ask about crypto, it's like, yeah, we're there. It's that time. But that energy, right, is like is unlike anything I've honestly ever felt before working in like the real world before coming to crypto. It is like the most powerful force. And what I think is really cool about like how we're thinking about using crypto rails is like if you can tap into that force and that energy, man, it can move mountains. So I don't know. We'll get into it, but like the pump science, like what pump science was born out of and like capturing that energy, I think crypto does an even better job of like putting that energy all in one place and putting it towards specific things. It's like truly electric. It's addicting, honestly.
It's addicting, and I can never go back. And honestly, like I think the reason we love this so much and want to build in it so much is because of how addicting and fun it really is. As much energy as you feel, it kind of inspires you to put it back out. If you don't mind, if we can like double click into what you just said a little bit deeper about like what is crypto, how does it interact with energy? I think everyone who, is either in crypto or talks about it, there always comes back to the question of like, what really is Bitcoin, right? What actually gives it its value, right? If you ask anybody who's skeptical, they're like, what is it really? Like, it's just magic internet money,
That's
unless you
like the
can convince
number
me
one
otherwise.
question. The
It's the
number one
number
question.
one question. And I think to me, the best answer that I have heard is that Bitcoin is backed by the energy required to create it,
Yep.
right? At the end of the day, I mean, you can think of miners and, the proof of work, but it's like work equals, energy. It's applied basically, right? And so, what is backing the Bitcoin? It's how much energy has been put into mining all of the Bitcoins now, and how much the cost of energy will be to mine the rest of the Bitcoins, right? So, if the cost of energy was zero, then the cost to mine would be zero. And, you could argue then you know, if you forget about the scarcity component of Bitcoin for a second, it really bottoms out. The cost to create is purely dependent on energy. And ultimately, like this is what gold and silver and these precious metals were supposed to represent because they were, these precious metals were hard to find. You had to put energy into them. They were just kind of the best way we could represent that in physical space. But Bitcoin allows us to even more purely kind of capture energy into money, right, and make that a transferable asset. So, I mean, you implied that, of course, with any sort of cryptocurrency, but I think Bitcoin does it the most purely.
It's so funny because I don't know, this is gonna sound really lame and like my boomer might be showing, but bought like a little disc of gold and had it sent to me in the mail. And honestly, like when you think about the energy, right? Like as I'm reflecting on what you just said, like this little disc that I have in my little safe, how much energy it took, right, to get to that like that physical form. But when you can tap into that via Bitcoin and like move into a digital version of that, like my God, watch out. And honestly, I mean, we can all agree the world is going digital. I couldn't even tell you like when people ask me for a check or cash, like I couldn't tell you the last time I had any of that stuff on me. So it's just like it is the next. I mean, people say it's like the next version of gold, which I know some people are like, I don't know, gold is gold. But really and truly putting that energy and putting it in a place where it's digital and has value and is easily tradable and can really quickly reflect energy. Like the gold up in my safe, I know that you can like trade gold, but I don't know. Watching the tickers on my phone is like far more engaging than wondering what's going on with that gold bar up in my safe.
Yeah.
But it's neither here
Well,
nor there.
I mean, like those people that are saying, gold is gold and gold is king, what they're really saying is that more energy has been put into gold as a currency for a longer period of time. But if you are an investor, right, you are trying to predict not the past, value, but the future value, right? And so which one is it going to cost more to create, gold or Bitcoin? Personally, I think Bitcoin because, it's programmatic and mathematically, you know, encoded to become more and more energy intensive to create. Therefore, the value should be higher. So, I think those people are just, plain and simply like stuck in the past, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. I getting into like that, I don't know, when you think about the energy and like the store of value that is Bitcoin and the ease of Bitcoin. I think something like this is a good place to start with like, okay, the pump science story. How did it start? How did we get here? What are the problems it's trying to solve? And how does crypto help solve it? So let's dig in a bit on like why on earth was pump science built and like what is it trying to solve?
I think we should start from the crypto perspective just because we're building off of that, right? You know, tokens are kind of like a measure of energy, right? And how do we potentially channel that energy into our own physical energy, right? It's represented digitally, but how do we take it back, right? And, you know, give ourselves as much energy as possible. Um, the typical healthcare systems at play don't actually do this, right? Like they aren't trying to think, you know, how do we keep people as healthy as possible? How do we give them the most energy to go out and create? How do we make sure that people can live their best lives, their healthiest lives, and go and enjoy all the incredible things life has to offer? The medical system, at least here in the US especially, is asking the question of how do we extract the most value, right? And it's because it's not really like shared by the people, right? Like people don't really have equity in their own healthcare. And there's a lot of reasons we can, you know, get into that. If you want to go all the way back, we can go all the way back to the 1940s if you want, of like why
Ooh.
this is the way it is, why it is the way it is. But that's kind of what it takes to understand why we don't have equity in our own health. And I think that because we have that kind of like disconnect, the medical system isn't there to serve us. And we kind of need to take it back for ourselves, right? In the same way that DeFi allows you to, you know, take your assets back for yourself. You know, DeSci and specifically pump science are trying to enable you to take, you know, healthcare and health back into your own hands and make it self-custodial.
Yeah, it's this is so interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who, when you talk about like taking your health back into your own hands, I think now more than ever, people want to do that and are doing that today. Like I don't know if it's happened yet today, but I saw there was rumors of like RFK Jr. removing food dyes from our food today. That might be announced today, let's say. I don't know if it's happened before this recording, maybe not.
No more
Um,
Skittles.
I know. No more Skittles. I got my kids giggles for Easter. Thank you very much.
Mm,
The healthier version. But anyways, I think we are seeing some of like the things around us realizing that like the system has gotten so far gone, like truly so far gone. What's in our food, how our food's being produced, what's in our healthcare. And when I had this conversation yesterday, I was talking to this individual who started seeing a functional medicine doctor. And it was super interesting because she was like, I'm so tired of how I'm being treated within the healthcare system. And she went to this functional medicine doctor, and the functional medicine doctor described it like this. It was when you go to a doctor, it's you can think of it like our healthcare system in a traditional MD sense, like a mop. Like you've gone because you're having all of these symptoms of something and they're flowing over and they just like mop it up. They just kind of clean up the symptoms. But she was like, I'm tired of my symptoms being treated. I like want you to tell me what the hell is the problem? Like, can we get to the root of the problem? And so she went to this functional medicine doctor and I mean a different philosophy, right, in terms of like how she was wanting to be treated. But the functional medicine doctor said this. They said, healthcare is how you think of it, how you've been treated so far as a mop. I'm a plumber. Like I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at your systems and I'm going to find the leak and I'm going to shut the water off so that then you don't have the overflow. You don't have the symptoms. And we're like getting to the root of the problem as opposed to just like mopping up the symptoms. And exactly to your point, Benji, like in terms of getting to equity and health and like taking it back, I think people are seeking even different treatment. Like they're tired of like mopping up all their symptoms and they want to figure out the source of the actual problem. And I think there's like a general movement in terms of like going to different doctors, thinking about your health differently than it's been thought about maybe since the 1940s, you know?
totally. I think that there's some interesting stats here. So like before 1942, oh, I'm gonna get these percentages wrong. So please don't quote me on these, but I think it was something like um, over 90%, I believe, of healthcare costs were borne by the consumer. Go to the doctor, you pay for the doctor. It's such a crazy concept. The number of people that were insured by the 1960s, for reasons we can get into, rose to like over 30%. And so now you have basically, you've gone from like single digit percentages of, people who are insured, where the insurance is paying for the service, to now over 30% of people are receiving health insurance. And, that may not be a bad thing, but what makes it insidious is no longer does the healthcare system now serve you. You might be the patient and the customer, but you're not the payer. An interesting analogy I've heard here is imagine a 5-year-old kid. 5-year-old kid goes out of the house, plays around, comes back, no shoes on. And you as the parent are like, where'd your shoes go? And they go, I don't know. And then it's your job as the parent to go like get them new shoes, right? There's just zero ownership or like understanding of consequences or caring honestly because the mindset is I paid into the system already. Now the system is here to take care of me. And unfortunately, it doesn't lead to the best outcomes. And so, I think it took a COVID for, a pandemic for people to really start, kind of like seeing the matrix, seeing, oh my God, like I can't trust this system, which I previously thought was like unpenetrable science, right? Just so trustworthy, built on, solid foundations that are meant to maximize human health. You realize, oh, it's actually a scheme, right? And it's time to start questioning it. And, whether it's evil or not, like, that's for everybody to decide. But the important piece is it's not here to fix our problems the right way. It's not here to come at the root cause of disease, to cure aging, to promote longevity, to give you energy. It's just there to make money off of you. And yeah, anyway, can go down that rabbit hole for a long time. Maybe we should cut it off.
Well, I will say it's super interesting from COVID, like digging into that just a little bit. Like for me, I honestly, it was humbling in that you realize how many big decisions are made on such little knowledge. And there was like foul sweeping guidance and it was rolled out as like this is the way it is based on all of this stuff. And then once you scratch a little bit deeper, you're like, there's really not much here. And we're putting like huge protocols and processes in place around an inch worth of data. And I don't know,
Mhm.
that to me was like when you get into COVID itself or the vaccines, like it just was alarming how many treatment decisions are made based on not that much information. And it was all they had available at the time. So you can't, this, that, or the other. But yeah, just to see it played out on like such a large scale, that to me was like, I actually am going to the doctor for the first time and we have the same information. And like, I feel like I get to make equally my voice and my opinions and my research is equally as just in time as yours. And so you're who it's a level playing field. I felt like for like the first time, it really was, and it was like this is a super humbling experience. Everything else you want to talk about, like I don't know, cardiovascular disease or diabetes, you probably are much more of an expert. But like COVID, same playing field. You know,
Totally,
it's wild. It's
totally,
wild.
totally.
Okay, so I do want to. There's a lot going on in trad sci right now, traditional science. Like, I mean, you think about like this movement in general, but like what's going on in traditional science funding in general. Want to give a hot take there?
Yeah, I mean, like the trend is clear, which is the government, which has historically been, the massive funder into basic research, is starting to kind of cut back on all costs, right? And it's very easy to criticize the science funding, but the reality is, at least here in the US, like our country's going bankrupt, right? And we collect 4 trillion in taxes, we spend $6.5 trillion. You kind of have to cut back on everything. And I think people are very quick to kind of criticize the scientific funding, and maybe we should be, but I think the reality is government funding is not sustainable, especially the way it's designed, right? Where the NIH puts money into a bunch of science, a lot of drugs, and actually a lot of value is created from that. Not denying that. In fact, I'm pretty sure every single FDA approved drug that got approved last year was NIH funded, right? Remarkable. But none of that, again, equity is coming back to the government, right? And so it's just, it's not sustainable, right? And so ultimately, like if you're Elon and implementing Doge and you're looking at the NIH, it just looks like a cost sink, right? It doesn't look like you're getting much money back out, but in reality, the profits are all being taken by pharma and biotech. So I think that there's some interesting trends. Number one is you're seeing reduced government spending on basic research. I think number two is the whole RFK movement, of Make America Healthy Again. And I think a lot of that is really going after how did we get so many things into our food that, increase profits at the expense of health.
Mhm.
And so, there was this NIH researcher who just resigned. I'm forgetting his name, but he resigned because he was looking at ultra processed foods and basically showing how bad they were for you and was like uncovering all this data. It didn't fit the narrative that the NIH was looking for, and so he left. And he was very, very vocal on his way out, and good for him because he kind of realized that you know it wasn't pure science anymore. It was science for the sake of narrative, and yeah, he couldn't stand for it anymore. So props to him. And I think really more and more people kind of exposing, you know, that science isn't, sacred anymore. At least we need to get it back to that place. But right now, it's not a place where, there's unbiased research going on. And that a lot of that research is in the service of companies who stand to profit off of it. And it's just not that it's bad. Like, R&D, of course, is what drives humanity forward. But I think there is this, important piece of like searching for truth that is very important, and auditability of data, and making sure that, what people who have ulterior motives are studying, what they're finding, and whether that is actually real or whether it just serves their pockets, right? At the end of the day, whether you're in crypto or you're in science, everyone is working for their bags, you know? So I think that's kind of my hot take is like so much of the NIH, for example, gets funding from big pharma, right? And so, like, not that that's a bad thing, but it just means that no longer is the science unbiased, right? A lot of it is in service of those big pharma's interests. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I think the hot take here is maybe scientific funding should be decentralized. Maybe it actually all of this, kind of cutbacks from the NIH in terms of scientific funding is a good thing. Maybe the sooner we get away from government funded science, the better.
Yeah. It's such a good point too. It really and truly and that's how it started, right? Like that's how a lot of the major scientific advancement started was like someone doing, you know, science in the shadows. And now we've taken the science in the shadows and there's been such a process built around it that you actually can't really do the science in the shadows anymore. And the whole system that's put in place is actually slowing down science happening in the spotlight and shaping it to fit a narrative, and it's really tainting the science that people want to do. Now okay, I think there's one other side of this story to unpack. You said working for your bags. And one other area that when you think about pushing the interests of the people back to the people themselves and people taking more empowerment in their health, we have grown up in the area of social media, right? Like we have grown up in the area in the time of influencers, in the time of everything being pushed to me via an algorithm on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. But what we're not talking about is like, okay, the rise of influencers and the rise of this type of marketing is leading to people making decisions, product decisions, based on recommendations and referrals, right? If I see, it's funny how it happens. Like when I'm on Instagram or social media, every single influencer, I can tell when there's been like an ad spend or like a budget push for a certain product because they all start pushing it. All of the big ones, they're all talking about like a colostrum product or a green product, and it's all happening at the same time. And they have similar talking points. What we're not talking about is like, okay, if ever there's nothing wrong with marketing, like there's nothing wrong with that, but like let's talk about working for your bags and like the transparency of those products, like what we're being sold and how we're being sold it. So, the supplement industry, like let's shine a light on that for a second. And yeah, like if people are making more decisions and are moving to more supplements, maybe holistic medicine, functional medicine, then the supplement industry is like a whole other thing to unpack. What, with the supplements that are being sold today, how do you feel about like the products that are being sold in terms of like, are they good? Do they work? Is how, with the influencers and the pushes that they're doing, like, are they selling actual products that are working or are they just selling marketing claims? Another hot take.
I think the answer is it's hard to tell. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. They're not putting in the work to actually show us, right? The money goes into how do we best brand this thing? How do we pay as much money as possible for distribution rather than evidence that something works, right? And so to me, that's a huge L because when my parents hit me up and they're like, what should I take that will help me live longer? And I don't have a good answer for them. That really bothers me because I have been looking at this space my entire life. I've been super interested in longevity, on pharmacology, on, you know, what all the random hacks and interventions are that you can do that extend your lifespan. And for them to be doing so many of the right things, eating well, sleeping well, working out a ton, and they want to add this extra layer of pharmacology to it, and them just not being able to, see the evidence that, certain things are working, and me not being able to tell them what it is, because the reality is none of these companies are actually generating the evidence and showing it, right? Maybe they're generating the evidence, maybe they're not. But the important piece is it doesn't make it back to the consumer, really. There are very few exceptions, but the vast majority of capital that's being put into the supplement industry is to enhance distribution. It's not to um, prove that any of these things work. And I think that this was the big impetus for Pump Science is our whole thinking was like, look, if we can create markets around each of the different ingredients that could hypothetically go into a supplement, rather than, monetizing the IP around the compound or the formulation, et cetera, just be radically transparent and create markets that allow people to discover the best ingredients. And then you can open source all of the data because you have an incentive to, because there's tokens behind each ingredient that represent each. Um, like, how cool would that be? Then we could have like a completely open source supplement company or, project or, help existing supplement companies open source data. But you could literally just open the floodgates in terms of here's all the evidence, here are the things that work, here are the things that don't work, here are all the different studies you ran. You can go look at them in as minute detail as you want, or we'll try and break it down for you and make it as simple for you to digest and understand what works and what doesn't. To me, that is the coolest thing ever because what is a more important question than asking, how can we live healthier and longer? Like, at the end of the day, all we want to do is like reduce human suffering and, extend our happy lives. And I think we have like, you know, the world isn't just going to give us this information, right? We have to go out and get it ourselves. We have to will it into existence. We have to put enough energy in so that we can get out this massively valuable tool for humanity. And I find it very interesting that Brian Johnson talks about how, like AI helping to solve longevity, yet he's not putting out there any of his data, right? It's all just kind of like his own body, his own data, like behind closed doors, and people can't really audit it. And so, what a travesty, right? Because even the person who has the biggest megaphone for, AI is going to solve the longevity problem is not, trying to create this an open source data set, right? And so I think, if nobody else is doing it, we're going to have to do it, right? We're going to have to do it because AI is going to solve longevity, but it's not going to do so with closed data. It's only going to do so with open data. How did we get LLMs? How did we get super powerful AI? Not from closed proprietary data sets from the internet. We got it because everyone puts their data out there pretty much for free on the internet. And that's the only way that we're going to get enough data for AI to solve aging.
It's wild. I have like 45 different thoughts on what you just said. It's like so many. So when you bring it back around to like why now, it really is like researchers are looking for funding, can't get it. The tech is now there to allow crypto rails and even like the science tech is there, like fast, transparent science, which we'll get into. People want more control over their health now more than ever. And like you could argue like good and bad, like people are becoming their own sales machines. Like they are, there's no doubt the power of like word of mouth, referrals, like I love this, here's why. No doubt that that works. But what we hope is that there's no more like trust me bro, that it's like go look at the data and decide for yourself. But really all of those dynamics are coming together at the right time to say like wait a second, each one of those is something that pump science addresses and is like is the ultimate protocol that like sits in all of that. So for me it's like absolutely now makes the most sense. But I don't know, for me it's like really and truly if you think about the AI side and the open information of what you're talking about, like I almost feel like pump science is going to become like the Google of longevity data, where it's like Google is like the front door to the internet and all of the internet pages that are out there. It's basically the plumbing that has allowed people to like move within all of the data and all of the information and figure out the best way to optimize it to like serve it to an audience. I almost see pump science as like being the rails for that for research, where it's like creating the infrastructure to navigate all this research that's being created, but in a way that's like usable on a front end, which hopefully is like a product, which again we'll get to. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, when you think about like when you have open data, the data is only as powerful as having something that like binds it all together and makes it usable and productive and optimized towards something. Google's optimizing towards search, but like you can think of like if you had all this research data, why couldn't you be optimizing for a product or, some sort of maybe it's a medication, maybe it's a supplement. But yeah, it's almost like all of a sudden when you said that, I'm like, wait, pump science is almost like you can think of it in like a Google lens where it's like hoping to curate all of these compounds, all this data, and then make it usable for a user to interface with.
100%.
Sorry, I digress.
No, it is very inspiring, honestly. Um, I think this is the way.
I think it's the way.
This is the
Okay,
way to
so
Valhalla.
it makes sense to get into what pump science is, and we've dropped bits and pieces of it. What I think is so important to do is explain it in its like simplest form because we know the machine that it is, but like to a 5-year-old or to someone who literally knows nothing about crypto, DeSci, supplements, like what is pump science? How would you explain it?
Yeah. The hard part is that there are two sides to it, kind of like you said. But maybe let's talk about from the customer perspective, like a longevity consumer. Like how will you and I interact with pump science? We will get a product delivered to our door that helps give us more energy and time, right? Pump science is just basically a tool to enable AI to optimize what we should put into our body that will increase our lives. That's what it is from the customer side of things. So you may take your all-in-one vitamin, whatever that means, and that may be the stack that the doctor recommends to you or that some supplement influencer recommends to you. But is it actually optimized to extend your lifespan? We don't know. We don't know. So why don't we rather put the things into our body that we do have the evidence that will extend your lifespan? So that's kind of what we're doing is we are making sure that everything you put into your body has a data-driven reason behind it, and that reason is because it can extend your life. So that's it from the kind of customer side of things. Pretty cool. It can always optimize. The more energy and money that gets put into the research side of things, the higher quality products that can come on the outside. Now, so that's the kind of real world physical side of things. And then there's the digital, right? The digital is a way to get the best ideas for what ingredients should go into those compounds and into those products and have people curate and fund the aggregation of their evidence, the execution of scientific experiments on those compounds. So, you know, let's just by way of analogy, Jillian's a scientist. She thinks that we should test urolithin A. Jillian sends urolithin A to Pump Science, and immediately people start looking at it and determining whether it deserves a study, right? Maybe urolithin A is garbage and it has no business extending lifespan, but maybe there are some people who think it could actually help. And so, her and the quote unquote market, right? Just like anyone who is interested in funding this research can then go and do it. They purchase tokens in the compound. And if that compound ever goes into that end product, then they share in the rewards and the sales from that product. So basically what you have is you have the research side and the development side of things, right? And so on this more research side, yes, it's tokenized. Users interact with it digitally, but in reality, what they're doing is they're basically submitting chemicals and compounds to labs to then go basically take those chemicals and give them to different animals, see if they help to extend their lifespan, and then all of that data comes back from the lab to the interface so that people can basically trade off of the value of the perceived value of the compound submitted, right? And the thinking is if an ingredient extends lifespan, it'll likely be more valuable because it's more likely to end up in the end product that's given to consumers, right? So what you have is basically an arena of a bunch of ingredients fighting for survival to be included into that final end product that gets delivered that must have the best evidence, the best ingredients only make it. And it's kind of a fight, amongst all of these ideas. It's truly an idea battleground in the same way that a market is or Twitter is, right? Where you have an abundance of ideas and you have a scarcity of good ideas. But those good ideas are the ones that filter to the top. They are the gems that people are hunting for. And the result is higher quality end products that improve human longevity.
So I guess pushing on that a little bit, the pump science saying is the only game you can play forever. So Benji, one more time, like really simply, what is the game? Like if I knew nothing about pump science and I saw that, what is the game I'm playing?
The game is don't die. And I think this is where Brian Johnson is right. You know, you log into the game of life, not even by your own choice. Your parents will you into existence. You show up. And now you have to understand existence and figure out what to do with it. But it's hard to get to that answer. And so the only thing you can do is keep on asking questions. And what we want to do is just enable us to keep asking this question of like, what are we doing here? And so to me, this is the infinite game, right? It is the game that you can play forever. The more people play, the more you know, people win, the more we all win, and the more we can all keep playing, right? And so, really, it's just about the game that you never want to have to log out for, right? The game that you never want to get game over. Um, I think the more that we gamify life, and the more that, the more we can feel like life is a game, the more fun it is, and the more enjoyable it becomes. And everyone is playing a different game, right? A lot of people are playing, the game of, acquiring wealth. I think to your point, a lot more people are playing this health game. But at the end of the day, even if you're playing this health game, how do you submit an experiment, right? Like if you are a health enthusiast and you just want to like improve yourself, like are you gonna run a bajillion experiments on yourself? It's just hard. It's just hard. And so I think what we want to do is create a network of people that can to like work together to get to these answers. Because there's power in numbers, like it's going to take a team effort for us to figure out how to cure aging. But the bigger we can make the team, the faster we're going to get there. And if it's a bunch of little companies, it's probably not going to get there as fast as if it's just one huge network, right? And so the network effects that will come from something like this, were it to succeed, um, would gamify discovering cures to longevity, and anyone can play. Anyone can play, and we all win. It's so positive sum, right? It's like literally the most potential positive sum game ever. You help yourself today, you increase your health today, you increase your health tomorrow, you can potentially make money doing it, right? Like it's positive sum in I think the most unique way I've personally seen in crypto.
Yeah, I wrote down like play so you don't get played because it's really like you show up and you play and you by playing this game, by hunting to see or guessing or speculating on which actual compound you think will extend life the best, you're actually making sure that someone can't market that and say it does when it actually doesn't. So it really is like a game that you can play that is the ultimate answer of the game of life and helps you figure out how to win or stay alive the longest in the game of life, which I mean, if we can figure out how to live forever, by all means, well, that would be like the ultimate unlock. But
I
yeah,
think it's such a good point. And Brian Johnson posted this the other day. I think it's wise. Living for tomorrow and living for forever are the same thing.
hmm
They really are. I think if you ask a lot of people, do you want to live forever? That's so daunting that they just say no, you know? But if you say, do you want to live for tomorrow? I think a lot of people would say, yeah, like I would love to be around tomorrow. And especially if you're in the, a healthy peak physical state. So I think it's saying, you're asking if you want to live forever, I think can be daunting to some people. But, before you, try and come up with an answer to that question, just ask yourself, like, do you want to live for tomorrow? And if the answer is yes, like, just extrapolate that out. Um, Chances are, like, and ask yourself that every day, you know,
yeah,
and there's a pattern there probably, right? And so might as well just embrace the fact that you love life. And
yeah.
that's such a great thing. And don't you want to extend that, right?
You made a
And that
point too about like not only extending it, but being healthier longer. This is, I guess I had a profound day yesterday because so I have kids, and my son yesterday was having a really hard day, mostly because it was the day after Easter. He was having like candy withdrawals, probably sugar withdrawals, probably red 40 withdrawals. But he was having a hard day, and I bent down to pick him up, and he's 6 years old now, and he's like getting to the point where he's pretty tall, pretty big. And he said to me yesterday, like, Mommy, will you be able to hold me forever? And I
oh,
had to say no, because I won't
oh,
be able to hold him forever. And then he asked me, like, well, how long do you think you'll be able to hold me? And I was like, Oh my God, it got like really deep. I was like, oh my gosh, one of these days I'm going to bend down to pick you up and it will be for the last time. But like, I want to be able to pick him up and hold him as long as he'll let me, but also as long as I'm physically able. And we were standing and we were looking in a mirror and I was holding him, just rocking him back and forth. And he asked me, like, do you think it could be when I'm 12? Do you think it could be when I'm 14? And I literally made a promise to him yesterday that I will do whatever it is that I can to hold you as long as I can. Which a part of that is like physical strength, yes, but like also optimizing my body and my health and like doing my part to make sure that I can hold him as long as possible. Because if it can be, I mean, I'll have to be really strong, but if it can be 14 or 15, like, and he will still let me hold him, probably not. Like, I'm here for it, but I don't want it to be 2 weeks from now. And trust me, he's already getting like really big. It's already hard. But if I can optimize my body to pick him up and hold him as long as possible and live as long as possible while I'm doing it, like, it's what I'm here for. That's like, I owe it to him, I owe it to me. And like the power of what Pump Science is trying to do is so much more, like you said, than just living forever. It's living for tomorrow. Like if I can live for tomorrow and be the best version of myself for the best number of tomorrows, I want to do that because I have a reason to do that. And maybe it adds up to an extra 5 years. And that would be like bonus, the cherry on top. But it just was yesterday like hitting me in the face because I like bent down and I let out this like audible like ugh, because he was heavy. And he was like, "How long are you going to be able to do this, Ma?" And I was like, "Well, at this rate, probably not long, but I'm gonna figure out how. Like I'm gonna figure out how to be healthier, stronger, longer. Well, it was my 6-year-old who like hit me in the face with it. Like, and we talk about longevity, and sometimes I think it can honestly feel like is an easy can to kick down the road because it's not my problem today. But let me tell you about the thing I'm thinking about tomorrow, and I want to be able to pick my son up as long as possible. Like, I want to do that as long as
Yeah.
humanly possible. You know,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Let's make it happen.
let's make it happen.
Let's make it
Okay,
happen.
so let's talk about how we're going to make it happen. Let's like really dig into it. What I think would be really cool to talk about is honestly, we talked about the game, we kind of talked about this gem hunting, but I think the game is only, we know, like being in the Web3 space, the crypto space, that like there's a certain way that we're going to fund this research, that we're going to find out what gives you the most tomorrows that adds up to 5 years. And we talked at the beginning of this call about the buzz and the electricity and the palpable energy that comes from crypto. And I think it's really important to talk about, like, you know, crypto sometimes gets a really bad rap, I'll be honest. And we've been through a lot, but crypto does a lot of things really well. And I think it would be great, honestly, to talk about how the crypto engine of this thing works and why crypto is the only way that this can happen.
Yeah. Um, and important to note that it really is the only way that this can happen. But here's how it works. You have an idea for a compound, for an ingredient or anything. You have some sort of hunch, whether it's based in evidence or a computer simulation or whatever the heck it is, that there's a compound that can extend lifespan. You take that idea and you submit a transaction on Pump Science that basically like registers that idea, and it sends 3 Sol to our team to go execute an experiment on it. And if you want to do it immediately, you can launch a token. And there are a few things that happen with that token. First of all, it all gets minted off what's called a bonding curve. A bonding curve is basically a primary market, meaning it is the first place that a token is issued. And it follows a certain like mathematical curve. And that curve is basically like the more people that buy tokens, the more expensive they get. It's not very complicated, you know? But we call them the drug dev, but it's basically the person with the idea, the creator, right? Like the inventor, the person who submits the compound. So yes, again, they pay 3 Sol, they launch a bonding curve, which creates a token, and that bonding curve starts to sell that token. And 80% of the tokens are issued off of this bonding curve. There's a million of these tokens, and as the creator, you can buy up to 50 million of them, which is 5%. And the reason that we cap it at 5 million is for a few reasons. Number one, because it's a token and it's not like equity. I think when you start to talk about like percentages, like how much does a founder get, people start anchoring to equity. But tokens are different because they're liquid, right? And so because the first person to buy the token can always sell it, and if anyone buys in, they can sell it for more. There is kind of this expectation that you hold less, right? Because it's a greater risk to the overall token holders if the person who holds the most tokens bought them for really cheap. So we cap it at 5%, but still you can own 5% of your invention. And if enough people buy the token and buy 85 SOL of it, which is about 70,000 US dollars, then you basically change markets. It basically signals that the token you've created is a good enough idea and there's enough people that are interested in buying it to where it deserves a secondary market that's more efficient, right? That has lower fees, that has more room to grow, that enables buyers and sellers to meet more efficiently. And so that process is called migration. And so that happens when there are 85 SOL in liquidity. So basically 85 SOL amount of purchases have been made on the token. And um, 82 of that SOL go directly to a secondary market. It's called an automated market maker. 3 SOL go back to the drug dev because they submitted a compound, paid us for the experiment, and they basically get refunded that SOL. So that basically all of the people who bought tokens basically share in the cost of paying for that experiment, right? It's kind of a reward back to the creator for taking the risk and launching a compound that actually enough people think is valuable. So that migration, basically 82 SOL go to the automated market maker, 3 SOL come back to the dev. Um, so that's all 85 SOL accounted for. Now, if you remember, in terms of the token being the token that represents the compound, 80% is issued off of the bonding curve. 15% is issued in that secondary market on that AMM, which is called Meteora. And 5% of it is airdropped to the token holders of the best performing compounds. What does that mean? It means that basically on Pump Science, you have a bunch of compounds getting launched. Some of them extend lifespan, some of them don't. The ones that do extend lifespan, you want to reward those holders so that they continue to go and find the life extending compounds. And so our way of rewarding them is by giving them airdrops of future tokens that are launched on the launchpad, right? Because that kind of creates an incentive for them to continue to find the best one, right? And so even if they have the best performing compound today, if somebody or if somebody launches a better performing compound tomorrow and it's extends lifespan by an even greater amount, then those token holders get rewarded. And so this is a way for people to both get rewarded and have an incentive to always be searching, to always be playing the game and finding that next best ingredient. And so now I think important to talk about the market maker. We work with a team called Meteora, and they're built on Solana, and they've created an extremely like high tech way to create a market. And it's all programmatic, of course, right? It's crypto, it's smart contracts. But what they've done is they've made the launching of tokens on their market makers very sniper resistant. One of the biggest issues that you see in crypto are called snipers. Snipers are basically people who run code that purchases tokens for them. Because, basically like crypto's an open market, it's truly a free market. Speed is an advantage, all right? The only problem with that is not everyone can write a bot, right? Like not everyone can make a sniper. And so it kind of ruins the user experience for many users that are just clicking around on their computer, right? So really you want speed to be somewhat of an advantage, but You don't want it to be the only advantage, because if it is, then you basically screw over normal users in favor of the high tech ones, right? The ones that can figure out how to um, write a program that can buy tokens for them as soon as they hit the market. And so Meteor has basically figured out this really intelligent way of basically deterring snipers, and it's with high fees, right? So they basically like the first few opportunities to buy incur super high fees, and this basically deters snipers, and it gives the opportunity for normal users to come in and compete, right, for those same tokens. So we think this is absolutely brilliant, and that's why even though Meteor isn't maybe the most well-known market maker on Solana, we think they have the best technology. And if you're really thinking about building the infinite game, you build with the team that's building the best technology. And so in terms of the crypto rails, those are the core components. Those are the markets. Then comes, okay, now we've found the compounds that extend lifespan. What now? And the answer is we create products that incorporate those ingredients, and we sell those products. And when I say products, I mean physical supplements that you sell to people. It shows up at their door, they take them. It hopefully increases their lifespan, yay. But the sales from those come back into the token market, right? And that is what enables the entire system to become sustainable, right? Is you are basically putting in energy as a trader into figuring out which are going to be the best compounds that extend lifespan. Consumers put in energy in the form of, purchases on products. And basically those two energies can kind of be synergistic, right? The traders create science that is valuable for the consumers, and the consumers reward the token holders as a result. And together, you know, people always ask us, are you a science company or are you a product company? Or a protocol, whatever you want to call it. And the answer is both, because the research is nothing without the development, right? And the development is nothing without proper research. Otherwise, you're just selling, puff, right? You're selling fugazi promises, no delivery, no foundation, no truth, right? And so this is the important kind of like dual component of the pump science protocol. There is the research funding, and then there's the product sales, and they reward each other. Maybe one more piece that like didn't mention, which is super important to touch on, is how the research gets funded. Yes, people are buying and selling and trading these tokens, but where does the money for the experiments actually come from? And the answer is it comes from the trading fees. So if you look at the most popular apps in crypto, they are trading products. Excuse me. So people in crypto and traders love trading, right? They don't want to crowd fund science. They don't want to, basically put in $90 and, get $10 of tokens back, right? They want to be able to, trade with as good of odds as possible. And so we tried to build them a product that would enable them to fund science with the best odds possible. And so basically all of the funding comes from trading fees. And our trading fees are super low across all of our apps. They're only high at the beginning of when markets open to deter snipers, right? But other than that, all of our trading fees are super low. They're 1% on the bonding curve, and they're 0.3% on the market, on the automated market maker. And the idea here is to make the odds as good as possible for traders, right? So that they keep coming back. Their chances of actually coming out positive after playing the pump science game is as high as possible, right? And so we want to extract as little value as possible and give back as much value as possible, because we know that that's the most positive sum way to structure this game. And so we've basically rebuilt, the kind of like pump fun bonding curve to AMM transition, except whereas in pump fun, the fees either go just directly to the pump fun team, or they honestly go into the ether. They instead go toward research, and that research funds something productive, and it makes all of the token trading something more than just meme coins and more than just trading. but it creates valuable data that backs products that, you know, change people's lives, right?
That anyone can see at any time. Okay, so let me play this back. I'm going to do my best. I was jotting down some notes, and I think just in transparency, the game is something that there's like different parts of the game. Like you said at the beginning, there's like the person who maybe doesn't even know the game but gets the product, and then there's the people playing the game, and then there's like the technology powering the game. So there's so many different sides of this game, and I know you and I are constantly trying to figure out like the easiest way to tell the whole game. I'm going to try. We'll see how this goes. But
Good luck.
there's two players really in the game of the quest to defeat death or like delay death as long as possible. And this is more on like the crypto side, I guess you can say. But there's the drug dev, that's player one, and they have the idea. And without the idea, the game can't be played. And then there's player two, which is the gem hunter, like the person who's really trying to figure out and speculate on which idea, which compound or cocktail will best defeat death. And in the game, there's the drug dev has the ideas, and the gem hunter is like the gas for to make the whole game go. Because without the gem hunter, you can have all the ideas, but without the gas, it's not going to go anywhere. Both are super important because you can't have an idea, no gas. You can't have gas and no idea. The gas comes from the fees, like you said. But again, the quest is all against figuring out what is going to delay or defeat death as long as possible. But as you're playing this game, there's like a secret villain that you didn't know about, or you maybe knew was out there, but you didn't. It's like lying in wait. And that's sniper bots. Because the game isn't fair. Not only is the game not fair in the real world, but in crypto, the game is stacked against you because there are sniper bots, aka people who have written code to buy, to pump and dump tokens that are lying in wait out there waiting for these tokens to launch. And they want to benefit from the game that you're trying to play. So what the Pump Science game makers have done is built not only the game so you can play to defeat death, but to try to build the most fair game as possible to defeat the villain you didn't know about or that's just lurking around out there, that is the sniper bots, and has built various technology to try and make the game for the people with the ideas and the people gem hunting as fair as possible. But not only that, if you play the game, now let's talk about if you decide to get in the arena and play. If you have the idea and you're the idea person, we've tried to lower the risk as much as possible for having the idea, which is low cost, right? Like 3 Sol to do the idea, but also reward you for taking the risk by sharing in fees if you get to the other side. And then also giving you back the 3 Sol if all of the gem hunters said, we think this is the best contender against death, let's find out. And rewarding the gem hunters, the people who are also playing the game, by giving them the opportunity if they pick the right one or the one that they think's the best and it plays out in the science, they get airdrops for as long as that science holds as the best science in a certain animal. So they're incentivized, right, to play because they will benefit, and they will also benefit by bringing other gem hunters to try and basically beat the winner that they've picked. But they get the airdrops from, which is so important, right? Like not only to encourage more people to play the game, but by incentivizing them to also pick the best ones and hold them. Like you don't want to just come in and play the game and leave. Like we're not trying to we're trying to make the game fair and make you want to stick around and keep playing the game. So it's not only like finding the right ones, but there is a benefit for finding and holding the right ones because you benefit for as long as you're in the top place with airdrops. But not only that, let's talk about when you get to death, like you said, we want to delay death as long as possible. The goal, a hero product. So now let's say enough people have played the Pump Science game and there is that product. You said the design is basically to then also have this like buyback and burn mechanism where a percentage of the actual product sales go back to build community and reward the community of token holders who hold those tokens with this like buyback and burn mechanism. But the game is all about defying death. There are a few players, but there's also different mechanisms in place to try and make the game as fair as possible. What do you think? How is it?
Hell yeah. You know what I was thinking about when you were talking about the snipers, like the other player that you weren't,
The other
expecting, like the villain, so to speak. I was thinking of, I don't know if you've seen Planet Earth, where the lizards are in the sand and they hatch and they have to escape the snakes, and the snakes are coming off the side. We'll have to get this video. Maybe we can splice together this video. But basically, in this video, you have a lizard hatching from an egg in the sand, and there are basically these like racer snakes who are in the rocks on the side, waiting for eggs to hatch, and they're just chasing them, right?
Oh my
And
gosh.
luckily, the lizards are fast enough, and evolution has made them fast enough where even as a baby lizard, you can still outrun the snakes, right?
Yes.
That's kind of what we're trying to do
They're
here. Is
fighting to
basic
survive anyways, and now they have to like survive the snakes first.
Exactly. But, evolution, so to speak, the market hasn't given them a way in this game yet to slow down the snakes so that the lizards can make it out alive. But, we're trying to give them that, and we're basically trying to handicap the snakes so
For sure.
that you can run faster.
And like I think part of what we talked about at the top of this podcast, which I know we've covered a lot, is like okay, the role of influencers and the role of people like people working for their bags, and like one thing that we also in the design thought a lot about was like if you get to a hero product, like for the people who've supported the research, who've supported the compound, who there's obviously like this mechanism, this airdrop mechanism, but like there's also this mechanism of like getting to a real product, and like there are hopefully the goal is to have like such a meaningful product that like anyone normies want to take it, but for the people who helped get it there, because the product wouldn't be possible without the people who were the gem hunters or who were the drug dev, like the idea maker, like making sure that for the people who got us that end product, the meaningful outcomes, the more days of me picking up my son, they're rewarded or have a mechanism to understand, to like realize some of the benefit of having a real product. And assuming they vote and there's they approve the buyback and burn through a community vote, there's a way to bring it full circle. And let's talk about the circle. Like I know we've talked about it a little bit, but like Benji, the flywheel, like how does it all work? How do you connect normies, crypto, research, and like really simply put it all together in a machine that hopefully cranks out the best science and the best products?
Yeah, so I got the flywheel in front of me just to make sure I have it all right.
We'll show it on the
But
screen.
for sure. So the important piece is, so trading fees fund experiments. What that means is we're not crowdfunding for research. We're basically creating markets where all trading fees help to fund the research. So in effect, it's, crowdfunding, but it's not in the same way that people are used to, right? It's, just as if you're trading meme coins. And honestly, this has been why we're perceived as meme coins, is because all it takes is trading. And so I think people are just pattern matching. And part of the pattern matching is a good thing, right? Because, we just basically convince people, hey, instead of trading meme coins, I want to trade these fun science coins. But in reality, the trading fees go somewhere very useful, and that useful is to scientific labs to generate research. So the flywheel is as such. Trading fees fund experiments. Those experiments generate data. That data supports product sales, and the sales increase awareness. So what that means is, all of the trading fees that are basically accrued from people being interested in the markets generates data. And that data is basically what helps to sell the product, right? Because at the end of the day, the science is important, but it's important insofar as it changes somebody's life. And the only way we can change somebody's life is if we deliver them an end product that's valuable. And the data demonstrates that value, right? Or it's a leading indicator of whether it will give that person value. And then the sales increase awareness. And I think what that basically means is the more sales there are, if the token holders vote for it, it means that more money is coming into the token market. And if more money is going into the token market, and if prices go up, then that becomes a vector for awareness, right? And a reason why people, not only come to the project, but come to that specific ingredient because, the price is going up and they're like, oh my God, what is this? And so it basically becomes this flywheel that incentivizes, funding experiments through these trading fees and participating in these token markets because you get something back, right? And that thing coming back is sales from products.
And I think it's really a symbiotic relationship, right? Because we talked about in the supplement industry, like there's a lot of what I've seen, to be honest with you, is like when people talk about a product having data, most of how I've seen it be done is like quality data. Like this compound is really pure. I can show you the lab testing for purity. And with the pump science data, like what does a reimagined future of like data plus supplement look like? Like how is the team thinking about really putting together a different data package that's different than what might be out there today?
Couldn't agree more, Jillian. Sorry.
No, I
Uh,
think to come around, it's like really, if you're going to take a supplement, we're going to sell a product. Bottom line is like, you should know if it works or not. And by the way, to find out if it works in humans, we'll all be dead. So, how are you going to know if you think it works in humans? You're going to run it through the pump science longevity protocol to find out. And the protocol will generate the data. The protocol will also optimize for the top ingredients that led to longevity in animal models. And like caveat, we know it's not humans. We hope to enroll anyone who takes the product into a decentralized human study to help us gather that data, but we can't sit around and wait for human data because literally we will probably all be dead. So,
yep. Maybe it's good to explain then a bit why. Like, I mean, I think you're touching on it now, but it's basically like, why are we testing on animals? Why don't we just give it to people? And I think the answer is because it takes too long and also because it's too expensive, right? So it's a cost and time calculation, right? And I think another one is the safety. So like we're working with supplements now, in the future, maybe we're working with new chemical entities. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. If we are, you want to de-risk them, basically, you know, demonstrate that they're likely to be safe as early as possible and without harming people. Of course, you don't want to harm animals too, but you certainly want to minimize suffering, right? And we want to minimize as much human suffering as possible. And so the reason why we have the order of C. elegans experiment first, then fly experiment, then mice experiment, then human trial is to, minimize any human safety risks. It's to decrease the time to getting valuable data as much as possible, and it's to do it fast, and it's to do it cheaply, right? Sorry, I forgot what order I did that in. Maybe worth a redo. The reason why we've chosen this order of different animals is because it is the most cost and time efficient pathway to getting substances to humans, right? So look, like we don't know if things are going to work. The only way to know is to test them. What do we test them on? We test them on the organism that has the fastest data readout for as cheap as possible while remaining as similar to humans as possible, right? So you might test it on, a random organism, but if it's, you know, more dissimilar to humans than like flies, then if it takes longer, then it's not worth it. It's not worth that trade-off, right? And so with any organism, you're always making a trade-off. Even if you're testing in a person, you're still making the trade-off of not knowing whether that generalizes to other people, right? And so you're always making trade-offs, right? And you're always just trying to predict, will this compound be valuable in me, right? At the end of the day, maybe it works for other people, but does it work for me? The best way to do that is this worm, fly, mice, human trial, and then you try it. Because that is going to be the best way that we take things from ideas to products that benefit you. And at the end of the day, if we want to train AI, to make these predictions for us. We have to give it a training data set that's large enough for it to be able to make valuable predictions. And it's going to require a lot of data. It's likely going to require more data than we can get from humans, that we have the resources to get from humans. And so we're going to have to start with something simpler. And it's much cheaper and easier and faster to get it from animals. And so we're starting with the smallest, cheapest animal that's as similar to humans as possible, which is C. elegans. It really is this kind of execution layer for longevity science that's super interesting. It's basically like a bit in terms of compute. It is computing longevity potential, essentially, in the most efficient way as possible. And then, you kind of go to the larger and larger models that are more predictive but take longer to calculate, you know. So maybe a more powerful computer, but it's slower. And so that is why we've chosen this pathway. It seems to be the path of least resistance to getting a data set that extends human lifespan. And that is what the whole protocol powers, is this experimental protocol, right? Pump science is as much science as it is pump, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure, for sure. Two sides cracked in half.
exactly.
To your point, like not all compounds are worthy of the big computer. So it's figuring out which ones are worthy of the big computer before you put it in the big computer. And why not you need to do that on a testing ground that's fast and cheap, honestly. And so the
Hmm.
protocol allows us to do that, to figure out what is worthy of validating in the big computer, humans.
Hmm.
I also think too, you touched on something important that I want to just like put a bow on, in that like obviously there's, probably a good portion of our audience that is familiar with like Brian Johnson. What he's doing is, great. What he's doing for the Don't Die with the Don't Die movement is great. How he's doing it is different than how we're doing it. Using his data, using the data on himself and keeping that data private to then form recommendations. And what we're trying to do is just crack open the science, do the science in public, use the power of uh, open and decentralized data to get to what we think will be what the data will tell us will be the best longevity products. We're grateful for anyone working in this space, but just believe in, trying different approaches to get there and get there as quickly as possible. And why not let everyone be a part of that journey and bring them into the process? So I wanted to share that. Okay, one last thing, and I know we've covered a lot here. I do think for people here, they might be wondering, like, honestly, how much work is there? Like, longevity and aging, is it really well studied? Like, are we doing science that's already been done? Like, how much novelty is there in this type of research? And how much of a blank space is the canvas? You know what I mean? Benji, let's talk about that. How much longevity has been studied, or how much these compounds have been studied in animal models?
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone kind of has this preconception that, you know, if there is an important question to people, that it's been answered by science. But everything comes down to resources, right? And so you may have such an important question of like, does, you know, supplement X increase lifespan? And more likely than not, the answer is we don't know. And so I'm just looking through here at Drug Age, which is the largest kind of open source database of compounds that have been tested on any animal. I'm just looking at the number of entries, and it's 3,423.
And
So
that's on any animal. Like, it
that's on
doesn't
any
mean
animal. It's on any animal. So basically, there are just over 3,000 compounds that have been tested for longevity on any animal. If you think about what chemical space is, how large is chemical space? Chemical space is 10 to the 60th power. 10 to the 60th power. It's like it's a bajillion, bajillion, quadrillion, bajillion. It's
that's by
so big.
itself, right? Like
Yes,
individual.
yes. Chemical space is massive. Even the number of drug-like compounds is still massive chemical space. And we've only tested 3,000. And so, uh, Where is the accelerator to testing the rest? If somebody else can show it to us, great. We'll, quit our jobs and work on something else, but we're not seeing it. And so, it may feel obvious or impossible that more compounds haven't been tested and that these questions have not yet been answered, but it's just the reality. We sat here for the first half of this and just, continued to criticize the system and point at its flaws and try and justify how we got here. But it's important to look at ourselves as a species in the face and say, like, we're not doing enough. And we have the power to change that. And it requires this wildly crazy system that we've just described here. But I think that if you kind of spend enough time thinking about this problem, this is kind of where you land. This is where you land. And, it requires this unique intersection of all these different various fields of science, of crypto, of protocol engineering, of, longevity and product development. It's so many important puzzle pieces. But if they can be put together by a community, they can really create the most powerful like library of data. And I think that's it from a high level. But on an individual level, it's like you can make yourself into the best version of yourself. And this is what it's going to take for you to become the best version of yourself. Um, but if you have another idea, we are open-minded people, and please come to us with it. But this is what we see as being the biggest accelerant of us all getting to the best version of ourselves.
Definitely. And, I think at the end of the day, like, why not also enjoy and have fun on the journey while you're doing it? So the game was by design. If we spent a lot of time talking just about the science, just about the research, and made it unengaging, I don't think many people would want to play the game. So hopefully you get on the ride or follow what we're doing and enjoy the ride, enjoy the game, enjoy watching the game play out while it's playing out in the arena. Because if not, then we've also failed because you can't play, no one's going to play a game that's not fun. So
For real,
there's that. All
for real.
right. Last thing before we close it out. What's on the horizon for Pump Science? There's, compounds in the queue, any sort of like background on what those compounds are, new features, anything you want to like breadcrumbs you want to leave for people?
Yeah, there's a few like really exciting things we're working on. Number one is, and I would say like this is the most short term, we are releasing fly racing. So what that means is we are running experiments on flies to see do compounds make them run faster, and we are enabling leverage trading along with that. And so basically, you could think about it like betting, but it's kind of betting in the way that crypto prefers to bet, which is as margin trading, right? So you put down some equity, you borrow some, off of a loan, and you get to, trade with other people's money, and that enables you to, potentially make more, right? So it's kind of like a bet, and the outcome is like more binary. And, we've always wanted a way to get people excited about data releases. A lot of our users come to us who are just traders, and they're like, why do I care about the science? I'm not going to be the ones consuming these end products. Like, I'm here to, make money. And we're trying to get them more and more involved with the science. And so, building a feature like this is really just to bring them in and give them a reason to care about the science, right? And make it fun, intrinsically fun to participate in the science that we're producing. And so that's one thing we're building, and it's pretty much done. Just trying to speed things up, honestly, to reduce latency.
No pun
But
intended.
yeah, exactly. Um, but that's really like the next feature to roll out, and then the other's more compounds. So, like I said, we got to search, a large set of chemical space. We've got the next piece of chemical space being tested and launched within the next few weeks, and we'll announce dates coming soon. But yeah, we got to test more compounds. That's the reality. And yeah, more tokens will be associated with those compounds, and they'll be launched by the drug devs that we're partnering with. And the reality is anyone can submit compounds. So if you have a supplement or idea, of what we should be testing, you can submit it permissionlessly. And we're about to enable a feature for you to launch the token permissionlessly too. But for now, yeah, you can submit your idea to us. We'll get it started. You can kind of claim your little piece of IP on the Pump Science platform and launch that experiment. And if you'd like, launch a token too.
Yeah, and just putting a bow on what you shared. If you have an idea, you can go to pump.science today and submit an idea. And just as Pump Fund made it as almost like too easy to launch a meme coin, Pump Science is hoping to make it just as easy to launch an actual longevity compound in a real longevity experiment. So if you have an idea, you can go to Pump Science today, submit that idea, and it should be pretty turnkey. And yeah, you can be the inventor or the idea master of a compound, or you can go play here soon and be a gem hunter and help us all defy death, or kick that can down the road as long as possible and be the best version of yourself today. So, Benji, I know we covered a lot. I know this was a really long, detailed conversation, but I have really appreciated where we've been, how we've painted this picture for everybody, and hopefully folks understand the game better, understand the design of Pump Science, understand the mission, the why now, and honestly the end game. Like, there's going to be a Pump Science product sitting on every desk, vanity, in maybe, a stick in somebody's bag that they're pouring into a drink as they head to the gym or head out for their day. The mission won't stop until our product is in the hands of people, and it's the best product backed by open data and letting you live for the best tomorrow and be the best version of yourself tomorrow. So thanks for coming on. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, or any follow-ups for Pump Science. Happy to have them back, but thanks so much for popping by.